Hello and welcome to a Tuesday live right here on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination and consume everything all across the grid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern time. On a Monday afternoon, if you were paying attention to the sports landscape, your head was probably spinning, trying to keep up with everything that was happening as the National Football League free agency frenzy started to get underway. That legal tampering period opening up at noon Eastern time yesterday. All of the breaking news, all of the updates, all of the big moves around the NFL, we will break down for you here over this next opening hour. And then through the rest of the show, DRS, it's Conference Championship Week in men's college basketball. 2 more tickets to the Big Dance Punch last night. James Madison and Samford are both going dancing. And, of course, we go around the association as well as the big fellas at the high major level get underway in conference tournament action as well.
Sometimes 3 hours just isn't enough, and my goodness, yesterday got started off with a bang in style right away here at noon yesterday. We're talking about the tampering period. Hey, pick up the phones, you can negotiate. Isn't it amazing where we equate it to Major League Baseball, where it takes like months and months and months to work out contract details? NFL general managers working out contract details in literal minutes for hundreds of millions of dollars. The NFL gets it right. Yesterday was exciting. It was fantastic. And Ben, we're going to talk about it this entire show. I can't wait.
In literal minutes or probably a few weeks and few days, those burner phones in the illegal tampering period cannot be traced by the NFL league office. This opening hour is your full NFL free agency frenzy recap here on this Tuesday on the early line. Let's make sure everybody is here for it. We welcome in that SportsGrid radio audience. Sirius XM, channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the fold as well. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. Every day, DRS, we do the 7 in 7. The 7 biggest headlines to open up the show from around the sports landscape last night and yesterday to recap here and set the stage for what we will discuss in the next 3 hours. This a special edition of the 7 in 7. It's an NFL free agency edition of 7 in 7. The 7 biggest acquisitions and signings yesterday. And we start with the biggest one, the quarterback, Kirk Cousins. Now in Atlanta Falcons, signing in Atlanta for a 4-year, $180 million deal that will feature $100 million guaranteed. Kirk Cousins at 35, who will be 36, coming off a torn Achilles last season, only playing 8 games in Minneapolis, is now the new starting quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons.
It's a good move by the Falcons here. And some people will pan this and say, you paid too much. It's Kirk Cousins. He doesn't win the playoffs. You tell a fan base and an owner, a general manager, and a head coach, and hear me out on this, Ben. You sign Kirk Cousins, you win this division. Who's not going to do that here? Is it like Atlanta's like, hey, well, we're used to making the Super Bowl every year. We're not interested in just winning the division. We want to find our franchise guy for the next 15 years. Nonsense. It's a new coach. It's a rebrand there in Atlanta. You have a great offense with young, talented wide receivers, young, talented tight ends, young, talented running backs. Add the veteran quarterback that gives you that presence there that does very well in the regular season. Atlanta just won the division yesterday. So all you haters out there saying Kirk Cousins makes too much money, they're going to win the division. That's what you do in football. Atlanta did it and did a good job yesterday. Good signing for them.
The odds makers agree with Donnie Rightside. The Falcons now an odds-on favorite, minus 110 to win the NFC South. Brian Burns used to play in the NFC South. He was placed on the franchise tag by Carolina exactly a week ago, but the Panthers aren't keeping him. They're trading him to the New York Giants for just a 2nd and 5th round pick, and then the Giants are going to pay Brian Burns what Carolina could not, a $150 million deal. He is now the 2nd highest paid defensive end in the National Football League.
I like this move for the Giants. It's a very smart move. You lose Saquon, which we'll get into all the Saquon Barkley details later and what they replaced him with. But if you're going to start to win football games, you know your offense stinks. You got one more year of your offense stinking. But rebuild that defense with really good young talent here. That's what the Giants did. That's a great front four. That's a good building block for the Giants. Maybe it doesn't pay off this year, but I like where they went with the Burns deal.
Listen, plenty of reaction coming your way, what it means from the odds perspective, how it will shape the landscape in the NFL in 2024. We're running through the headlines and DRS. we're running to the new running back in Philadelphia, Saquon Barkley, leaving the New York Giants, signing with the Philadelphia Eagles, a 3-year, $37.75 million deal that can be worth up to $46.8 million, resetting the running back market and a new back alongside Jalen Hurts in the city of brotherly love.
Not a bad move by the Philadelphia Eagles. You get a 3-down back now. If you're going to pay $5 or $6 million a year, why not just go out and get the best one on the free agent market? The Philadelphia Eagles did that. Now, let me hear you out on this. It's a very good offense for the Eagles next year. They still got some things they have to do on defense, but let's flip it back to a Giants perspective. The Giants signing Saquon Barkley to any deal, just like the Philadelphia Eagles were going to give, would have been ludicrous. So maybe that Giants front office is turning the tide here. I know it stinks for Giants fans. The only thing you cheered for the last 5 years basically was Barkley here, but that's a smart move by your general manager to not sign Saquon Barkley, and an equally smart move for Howie Roseman of the Eagles. If you think you have a team that's on the cusp, add that running back. But Donnie, it doesn't work here. Yeah, look at Christian McCaffrey. It worked out in spades in the 49ers. That's what the Eagles are trying to capture here with what happened in San Francisco.
If that contract gets up to the $47 million it can reportedly reach, Saquon Barkley would be only behind Run CMC as the second highest paid running back in the history of the National Football League. Focusing on the running backs, Josh Jacobs, a surprising move. He is signing with the Green Bay Packers, 4-year deal, $48 million that then led to the Packers releasing Aaron Jones, who spent all 7 years of his career at Lambeau.
And by the way, we do have a Fade the Public poll coming up in hour number 2 to end it here. The Green Bay Packers should be on your radar, people. Loved what they did yesterday, and I love surprises here. Never in a million years did I think that the Green Bay Packers were going to sign an elite running back to go with now a good young quarterback. If they added the wide receiver position and tight end position, watch out for the Packers next year. Are they the best team in the NFC North? Who knows? Probably the Detroit Lions, but loved what the Packers did yesterday.
A lot of running backs signing yesterday, including Tony Pollard. After spending all 5 seasons of his NFL career in Dallas, he is now going to be in Nashville with the Tennessee Titans, a 3-year deal worth $24 million. I'll give you my reactions later, but if the Titans let go of Derrick Henry to pay a running back without a very high ceiling this season, an intriguing move.
Bozo alert is what Ben wanted to say. He's just being too friendly here. Yeah. What are the Titans doing? This is the last thing you wanted to spend money on with a team in transition. I don't know. Sometimes it just cracks me up what some of these NFL guys do, Ben.
The Raiders added a quarterback, Gardner Minshew, 2-year deal, $25 million, 20 of that guaranteed. They also hold the 13th overall pick for Minshew to battle it out with Aiden O'Connell for that starting quarterback job. And speaking of those Raiders, Christian Wilkins signs a 4-year, $110 million deal in Las Vegas. The big defensive tackle gets paid.
I love what the Raiders did yesterday. And I used to work with a guy on this network who used to tell me that he'd rather have Gardner Minshew than Jalen Hurts, which is ridiculous. But now you got a starting quarterback out there in the desert. Can they win some games here, people? We'll find out.
I wonder who that guy is. We continue our reactions. Kirk Cousins, now in Atlanta. Up next.
The Bostonian versus the book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State rule.
Be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the book.
The books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The opening hour of this Tuesday live on the early line on SportsGrid is an NFL free agency frenzy, a recap of all of the moves that happened yesterday as soon as that legal tampering window opened up for the National Football League at noon Eastern time. As both Donnie and I have told you, the legal tampering window might have started at noon Eastern. Believe you me, those burner phones between agents, representation, and NFL front offices were working overtime all weekend long. The big move yesterday, the one we have speculated about since the end of the 2023 campaign, where would Kirk Cousins land? Would he stay in Minnesota with the Vikings? Would he find a new home elsewhere in the National Football League? That indeed was the case yesterday. To Atlanta, Kirk goes. The Falcons have a new starting quarterback. They are paying Kirk Cousins a 4-year deal worth $180 million. That's about $45 million annually with $100 million guaranteed. 90 of that in the first 2 seasons. Another bag is the headline, and rightfully so. Kirk Cousins will now make over $400 million in his National Football League career. Sure, you can knock him for prime time, although I think those stats are slightly flawed. Sure, you can knock him for a lack of playoff victories. Only 1 postseason win in his 12-year NFL career. But the man, Kirk Cousins, is a generational bag getter, and a bag he gets yesterday from the Dirty Birds.
Yeah, he's going to have a lot of fun with this Atlanta football team as well. New regime coming into town. Raheem Morris goes, you know what? My offense now is secured. Let me focus in here on this defense. But let's talk about Kirk Cousins. And he does get a lot of shame, I guess, on Twitter and social media. It's just not a big-name quarterback. Take out last year where he got injured, only played 8 games, Ben. Before that, 7 of 8 seasons where he thrown for at least 4,000 yards. And you can see the touchdown numbers. He's thrown 270 touchdowns in his career. He knows how to push the football down the field. Is he the greatest quarterback we've ever seen? No. But if you're looking from an Atlanta Falcons perspective, you had nothing at quarterback. You wake up in the morning, have a typical Pro Bowler now that winds up in your backfield, and you say to yourself, well, what does that do for next year? We talked about Russell Wilson a lot yesterday, which I do actually think the Steelers are a better version of themselves with Russell Wilson than Kenny Pickett. But you still look at the odds market, Ben. Yep. They're 4th by a wide margin here. So how much better did they actually get? The Atlanta Falcons had the choice to make. And as I brought up the show just to start it out, saying with Kirk Cousins, look at this. If you're the owner, Arthur Blank, you sit there and go, Well, if I sign this guy, I'm going to win the division. Who's not going to do that here? Even if it's a bad division, you owe it to your fan base, your front office, your coaches, and your players to put your best foot forward. There's two things you can do in the NFL. If you don't think you can win your division and or make a run in the NFC or AFC, you're in constant rebuilding mode. Find your future quarterback. They tried to find their future guy last year with Desmond Ridder. It didn't work out, but it's almost like seize the day. Get Kirk Cousins, become the best team in the division, and let the chips lay where they may at this point. I love the move for Kirk Cousins. I don't care if anybody pans it out here. Right now, the Falcons, by far, the best team in the NFC South right now.
And the odds makers agree. We'll get to the outlook for Atlanta in just a moment, but let's focus on Kirk Cousins. 12 seasons in the National Football League. He has been highly debated about his ceiling as a starting quarterback for whatever franchise he has been with. Washington, Minnesota, and now with Atlanta. Can he win you a conference championship? Can he win you a playoff game? How far can he take you in the games that matter the most when the lights shine brightest, literally during prime time? Last year, only 8 games for the Vikings. He threw for 18 touchdowns and 5 interceptions with a lethal offense in Minneapolis. His 18 touchdown passes, despite only playing 8 games last year in the National Football League, still ranked in the top 20 in the NFL. And all around him now in Atlanta, he has Drake London, Kyle Pitts hopefully can be that 4th overall pick that he was a few years ago, and Bijan Robinson. So again, let's go back to the stats for Kirk Cousins to focus on the individual that is the new quarterback in Atlanta. He will make over $400 million in his National Football League career. And in my estimation, Donnie, he is an upgrade at the quarterback spot. He is one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the National Football League. Does he make Atlanta a Super Bowl contender right away? No. Does he put them in position to make some postseason noise? I would say yes.
And yes, absolutely here, because if you win the division, what happens, Ben? You get a home field advantage in round number 1. You saw it last year. A bad Buccaneers team sneaks into the playoffs last year, gets an Eagles team at home, and wastes them here. That's what you're selling to your fan base. We have a legitimate chance to make the playoffs, win the division, and win a playoff game. You're going to sign up for that. But let's also take a look at Kirk Cousins moving to Atlanta and what that means. It's only money, Ben. You spent only money. You didn't have a deal like, hey, Russell Wilson's still in his prime. Let's give up the entire farm and give him a ton of money. It's only money. You didn't give up anything in the future, a first round, second round, third, 2/3, 2 seconds, whatever it might be. It's very rare in the NFL where a quarterback with this type of accolades, and Donnie didn't win a Super Bowl. Hear me out on this. 4,000 yards every single year hits free agency where you just have to pay the guy and you can still go into the draft like, look at this. Well, they would have had the 8th overall pick or the 9th overall pick. They don't have that anymore. They have that. They have their quarterback. Now you can stack those chips here to see what you can do. Are they going to win the Super Bowl? To me, no, they're not. But they're a much better football team, should win the division with a legitimate chance at a home playoff game to be a favorite at home and win that football game. Kirk Cousins was a solid move, and the odds makers, Ben, agree with that.
Completely so. When these divisional markets opened up just about 2 weeks ago, Atlanta was booked as the favorite by a buck over the Bucs. I found that a little bit intriguing because at the moment, the Falcons were in the running potentially for Kirk Cousins, but it was a Kirk Cousins price. It wasn't a Desmond Ridder price. It wasn't the resurrection of Taylor Heineke in the number to make Atlanta a favorite. As of yesterday, it was plus 130, still a full dollar in front of Tampa, even after giving Baker Mayfield a long-term contract extension. Now that plus money number to win the division as the frontrunner has become an odds-on minus money price to win the NFC South. And Donnie also represented in the movement in their conference price to win the NFC and, of course, hunt down a Lombardi trophy in Super Bowl 59. $15 off that price, 45-1 to 30-1 from just 2 weeks ago. Now 14-1 to win the NFC title, tied for the 6th best price around the NFC. Do you believe Atlanta can get there? They are the odds-on favorites, as you have said, to win the NFC South, and I think rightfully so. It hasn't been a very strong division the last 2-3 years in the National Football League anyhow. They could win 9 games and still be in that first place spot. But can Kirk Cousins, as the quarterback in the ATL, bring the Falcons to an NFC championship game?
There's possibility because you're going to have one of those top 4 seeds by winning the division, which I think they will. And also, we're talking about free agency. Technically, we're not even in the free agency. We're in the tampering period. Add a couple pieces of that defense. Have a very good draft. The sky could be the limit on offense. And also, talking about this from a betting perspective, what do we love to do in football season? It's bet team total overs. It's bet overs. They play in a dome here. And also, if you're just out there looking at those props, Kirk Cousins is going to be a great prop quarterback. Drake London now rises a couple levels because Kirk Cousins is going to be airmailing that ball deep down the field. Kyle Pitts over the middle, and also Bijan Robinson is that satellite do-it-all running back out of the backfield. So many intriguing options where maybe in the past you were looking at the Falcons and going, boy, I would love to take some of these guys, but it's Taylor Heineke at quarterback. It's Desmond Ridder at quarterback. All of these guys, valuable options, touchdown parlays. I can't wait to bet on the Atlanta Falcons next September because they're in a dome, in a bad division, with a good quarterback. Let's get it going.
And Donnie made a great point. The league year officially begins tomorrow in the National Football League when you can actually and officially sign the dotted line. But we have all the updates in the news for a reason. You might be thinking to yourself, guys, who's the offensive coordinator in Atlanta? Arthur Smith was calling the plays last year as the head coach. Zach Robinson, 37-year-old former quarterbacks coach in Los Angeles with the Rams under Sean McVay, has only ever worked in L.A. since he became an assistant coach in the league in 2019. Has that familiarity, of course, with Raheem Morris, who was the former defensive coordinator in L.A. over the past 3 seasons. This offense is going to drive the bus for the Falcons and has the potential of being lethal. So what are the Vikings going to do? They signed Sam Darnold, a 1-year, $10 million deal to Minneapolis. And J.J. McCarthy, you are a Minnesota Viking. Plus 230, by the way, for the Vikes to draft McCarthy right now on the FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm going to bet it in the commercial break, and then we'll talk running backs on the other side.
The Bostonian versus the book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in. This is
they're
the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that lightning in a bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the book.
The books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats and fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart Team.
Winning back-to-back road games.
I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The NFL Free Agency Hour live right here on this Tuesday on the Early Line continues. Donnie made this point right before the commercial break that I would like to reiterate. The NFL league year officially begins tomorrow afternoon. That's when all the news that we have received over the last 24, 36 hours officially becomes official, but we know it to be the case. Saquon Barkley, DRS, as we focus first on the running backs in this segment, is now on his way to Philadelphia. Bad blood between Big Blue and the Birds, and Saquon makes the move within the division, staying in the NFC East, but leaving New York for Philadelphia. Now let's focus on the money as well. A 3-year deal worth $37.75 million can be up to $46.8 million with $26 million guaranteed. If it gets to the highest level of that contract, it would be just under $16 million annually. That would make Saquon Barkley the second highest paid running back in the history of the NFL, only behind Christian McCaffrey. As an Eagles fan and backer yourself, DRS, what do you make of this move for Philadelphia?
For the future, we'll see. And I preface that. But as a fan, let's just get the handicapper out of my mind. As a fan, I love it. And who wouldn't love it, right? You get an exciting player that comes to your team that's an above-average running back at a position of need. Since DeAndre Swift wasn't going to get re-signed, you have to love this. And also, the fact of the matter is we're dealing with rivalries here in the Northeast. The Eagles fans, by the way, I like to preface this as well. Eagles and Giants fans, I believe, respect each other. Washington has been so far off the map it doesn't matter. But I think we're joined in forces to absolutely hate the Dallas Cowboys. So I like to start there. It's not one of those rivalries like disrespectful here. You should have respect the Giants, because at least they win a Super Bowl in the last 30 years where the Cowboys haven't. Eagles have done the same thing. So let's get that out of the way. But it does hurt the Giants fandom here. They haven't had much to cheer for here. When you take their very best player and a fan favorite and put him on the opposite team, that's certainly a tough scene. But get down to the football metrics here. The Eagles have been waiting for a long time to get that true third down back. Now in the NFL, and proven rightfully so, you're not supposed to spend money at running back. But also, there are caveats here. When you get an upper-level running back like a Christian McCaffrey, do you remember all the people, Ben, that said, you know what, this is ridiculous. Carolina won that trade by so far. How could you give up any money for Christian McCaffrey? They're the best offense in the NFL because of Christian McCaffrey, and he stayed healthy the past couple of years. That's what the Philadelphia Eagles are aiming for. You take a look at Saquon Barkley on some really, really bad New York Giants teams where he actually shined behind a terrible offensive line. Now he gets an above-average offensive line with a quarterback that can run an RPO. You talking about defenses starting to struggle with this? How about putting that football in the chest there of Saquon Barkley? The safeties come up, and then you have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown going over the top. It's a match made in heaven in Philadelphia, even though you're not supposed to spend money on running backs, which is usually the game plan for the NFL. And again, if the Eagles say, if Saquon Barkley can put us over the top to win the NFC East and get us a top 2 seed, it's worth it. So he said, Donnie, you told the Giants, don't sign Saquon Barkley. That's a terrible deal for anybody who signs him. Not necessarily, because the New York Giants aren't going anywhere over the next 2 years, which means you're going to be handing off to Saquon Barkley with 1,300 yards on the ground and getting nothing for it and paying a big price tag where you can improve your football team elsewhere. I love the fact that he went to the Eagles in that same division. This could put the Eagles over the top in the NFC East over the Dallas Cowboys, even if the FanDuel Sportsbook doesn't agree just yet. The Eagles, again, got better yesterday on offense because they added Saquon Barkley.
There might be respect between the Giants and the Eagles. I do not believe there is a like, but the Giants should dislike Dave Gettleman for all that he did to tarnish the Giants and their future, much more than anything that is happening in Philadelphia. It will be a complicated legacy for Saquon Barkley with the New York Giants. Second overall pick in the 2018 NFL draft. He played 6 years for the G-Men. They didn't pay him last year. They tagged him. They reworked a short-term contract extension. There were some incentives incentives to get it up. If he hit career numbers, he did not. But Saquon still played in 14 games, ran for over 960 yards, and caught 280 yards as well. That is what leads to a running back getting paid. We will see what the value is, but it was really interesting to see all of these deals for the running backs yesterday, DRS, and what it meant for the running back market. The first two backs to sign yesterday signed for the exact same deal. DeAndre Swift, the former Eagles running back, coming off his first 1,000-yard campaign in Philly a season ago, goes to Chicago. 3-year deal, $24 million, north of $15 million guaranteed. Right after that, Tony Pollard, after all 5 years with the Cowboys, makes the move to Tennessee. Same exact figures, 3-year deal, $24 million. Josh Jacobs, a bigger deal, 4 years, $48 million in Green Bay. We will get to Jacobs in just a moment, but allow me to also bring up Austin Eckler, now in Washington in the NFC East, 2 years, $11.43 million. And Devin Singletary, after a career year with Houston, is now the replacement for Saquon Barkley in New York. Interesting moves there by the Giants, to say the least. The one that really stands out from the peculiar aspect is the one we led off the show with in our NFL free agency 7-in-7. What are the Titans doing? They have the second longest price in the AFC at 65-1. There is not a ton of optimism this year in Nashville. Rookie head coach in Brian Callahan, virtually a rookie quarterback in Will Levis, into his second year. But they had a great rookie running back last year in Tyjae Spears out of Tulane that emerged in the tail end of last year in the National Football League. And it was clear they were letting Derrick Henry go. They weren't putting the franchise tag on the King. So why go out and spend $8 million annually on a running back? What are they doing in Nashville, Donnie?
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing in Nashville. Some people might even equate this, well, Donnie, you're just talking about DeAndre Swift, who's a solid move to the Chicago Bears. Different vibes in the building where you're getting the number 1 overall pick, which is probably going to be Caleb Williams. You don't really expect him to go out and do a performance like Bryce Young had in Carolina. This is a team with a lot of money to spend, revamping their roster, where you can look at him next year as maybe even a legitimate playoff contender. You just saw what the Houston Texans did last year with a quarterback that steps in as a rookie, and you know he's the real deal. That's what we're expecting out of Caleb Williams. But the vibes, you're right, in Tennessee are so different. Like, I understand if you're saying we're going to move on from Derrick Henry, we're going to piecemeal the running back position, go cheap here, bring a couple guys in, $1 million apiece, and see what happens. That would make some sense. But it was like day number 1, like your target was Pollard and paid him a decent amount to come in and be a running back. Now, granted, teams do need running backs, I understand, but it just doesn't make sense for that franchise. You're retooling. You don't even know who the quarterback of your future is going to be. If you want to say it's Will Levis, that's fine, and you want to give him a solid running game, okay. Why don't you just keep Derrick Henry at that point here in town? He probably would have gone for just about the same price here, and he's already a fan favorite and still looks like he has a lot of tread left on the tires, or at least to get you through the next year or two here. That was one of the more baffling moves yesterday. We did think Tony Pollard would get signed, but I didn't think right out of the gate into the Tennessee Titans. So yes, from a head-scratching position at running back, I think most of the running back signings yesterday were really quality and made a lot of sense. This one was the one to us, Ben, that didn't make too much sense.
Especially in terms of what the payment was. DeAndre Swift to Chicago, maybe it's a little bit too much, but the Bears have a ton of cap space and need to actually spend. Austin Eckler leaves L.A. He will now be in Washington. Replacing him in Los Angeles, Gus Edwards makes the moves from Baltimore to L.A., reunites with his former OC in Greg Roman. A big move yesterday made by the Green Bay Packers, signing Josh Jacobs, who led the National Football League in rushing yards 2 years ago in 2022, in releasing Aaron Jones. There was a thought for a brief 30 minutes the Packers might have the best 1-2 punch in the National Football League, but after 7 years in Green Bay, Aaron Jones now released. He goes out, Donnie, with 5 games, including that playoff run for the Pack, where he had at least 108 yards on the ground. That was one that left even Packers fans being like, what? We're letting go of Aaron Jones?
Yeah, no, and Dylan, you take a look at him not being that lead back here, going to continue with the future of the Green Bay Packers. And also, you did get some hope down the stretch. Like, hey, this is the guy that we saw the past couple of years could be that electric running back. Maybe if he's healthy next year, along with Jordan Love at quarterback, they could do some big things. But this is what I like, and this is very un-Green Bay-like, which we'll talk about some of the other moves a little bit later, which I liked as well. But to go out and get a superstar player and pay a lot of money in free agency to improve the football team on offense is something, Ben, they never really did under Aaron Rodgers all that much. I love this move because now you say you have a true elite back in the running field in Green Bay, where when you play in Chicago, the Windy City in December, you need that tough ground game, which Jacobs can hit the home run, but also get you that key 3rd and 2 conversion where you just need to pick up 3 yards to get that. I really like this move. It was the surprise of the day for me that, again, if you look at the Green Bay Packers today from yesterday, you got an upgrade at the running back position. They're probably not done, but I love this move. That means you're going all in with your young quarterback saying, you know what? I trust you. You look like the future of this franchise. Let's now get you some help here.
The NFC North is going to be interesting. The Lions are a favorite to win a division for a second consecutive year after it took them 30 years to win a divisional crown in the NFL, plus 135. But Green Bay only less than $1 behind at plus 220. Now only a 20-cent gap between Dallas, the favorites in the NFC East, plus 115, and the Eagles move up plus 135 after the moves yesterday. Aaron Jones released. Joe Mixon released late last night by Cincinnati. Both spent all 7 years of their NFL careers with their respective franchises. What is the market now for the veteran running backs after the slew of moves that we saw yesterday? The Raiders have added a quarterback, Gardner Minshew, 2-year deal, $25 million. There was some thought that maybe the Raiders would be in a trade sweepstakes for Justin Fields. Now that market for Fields looks a little bit bone dry. What did you make of the move by the Raiders, DRS, bringing in Gardner?
A surprising move. And also, you wanted to look at the financials, Ben, right? Because if this was one of those moves like, hey, Minshew's in town, 1 year, $3.8 million, you'd say to yourself, okay, he's just going to be in the mix for a backup spot. They paid him starter money just in case he wins that starting job. And by the way, they're a better football team next year if Minshew starts.
Longest odds in the division in the AFC West. Gardner's former top target, Michael Pittman, 3-year deal, $70 million, was under the tag in Indy. He stays in Indy. The breaking news ain't done. Aaron Jones stays in the NFC North. We'll tell you where next.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State rule.
Be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The Brooks are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
and these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
To end out last segment, in our opening hour of this Tuesday on the early line, our NFL free agency frenzy, we asked, where is Aaron Jones going to go? What does the market look like for the vets that were released yesterday by the respective franchises? Aaron Jones by Green Bay, Joe Mixon in Cincinnati, with all the moves that we saw for the running backs on the first day of the legal tampering window in the National Football League. Well, early on day number 2, Aaron Jones isn't going all that far. He remains in the division. Diana Rossini of The Athletic, and only The Athletic, reporting in the last 5 minutes, Donnie, that Aaron Jones is going to Minnesota. He will be the new running back for the Vikings, who, of course, released Alexander Mattison earlier this offseason. A big move for the Vikes that will have to answer a quarterback question, as Kirk Cousins is now in Atlanta. They signed Sam Darnold to a 1-year, $10 million deal yesterday. And as I said before, I think they are using that first-round pick on a QB. I think his name is going to be J.J. McCarthy, and I'm not sure they even remain at 11th overall. I think Minnesota makes a move up.
I like this move here for 2 reasons. Number one, you're getting a quality running back. He probably got him at a discounted price as well. We don't have the financials that came out just yet, and also familiarity with the guy. So obviously you see him a couple times a year. You think he still has some gas left in the tank. As Ben and I just talked about, he looked really good down the stretch last year. Now, some would say, like, well, this is a franchise in a little bit of turmoil right now, not knowing who the quarterback is going to be. Do you know a great landing spot for a quarterback would be? With an offensive guru that they have at head coach, with maybe the best wide receiver in football. You play in a dome and now hand off and have a ground game behind you with Aaron Jones. That's a perfect selling point for a young quarterback to come in, and not like the Chicago Bears did with Justin Fields by saying, we're not going to give you anything. Matter of fact, we're going to make it as hard on you as possible to be a good quarterback in the NFL. It's great for the Minnesota Vikings. So if they're like, oh no, what are we doing wasting our money on running back here? I like some of the moves they made yesterday, but you need to have a competent offense around a young guy. I like this move for the Vikes. I do.
Jonathan Grenard, who was coming off a career year with the Texans, we'll show you in just a moment. 12.5 sacks last year in H-Town, signed by Minnesota yesterday. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the general manager in Minneapolis, was questioned for some of his moves previously because the Vikings were kind of in the limbo area between a teardown and rebuild, and still trying to go after it and win a couple of playoff games and contend for a conference championship. Many in Minneapolis happy with the moves yesterday, not paying Kirk Cousins the premium, focusing on the future at the QB spot, and now adding around. The biggest move that Minnesota will make this offseason, if there will be a long-term contract extension for Justin Jefferson entering his 5th year in the National Football League. That is the best move to make a young or new quarterback the happiest with the Vikes. Now we focus from the offensive side, Donnie, to the defensive side of the football. The big news yesterday, Brian Burns, tagged by the Carolina Panthers exactly a week ago. He was tagged, then traded to the New York Giants, and then Big Blue signed him to a big deal. 5 years, $150 million, more than $87 million fully guaranteed. It makes him the second highest paid defensive end in the history of the National Football League. Let's go to both ends. We start with the Giants, who gained Brian Burns and add one of the most talented edge rushers in the National Football League. What did you make of the move for New York?
I love it because you can't never undersell me, Ben, on a chance to improve in the trenches. That's how you win football games. Build your offensive line, which, again, the Giants did yesterday, which I like some of the moves they made there, but build your defensive line. If you're going to lose Saquon Barkley, you don't want to pay him big money. How do you allocate those funds? Now, granted, they signed a running back yesterday, which I do appreciate because you do need running backs in the NFL. And you got him on the cheap. But the defensive line here, you drafted Kayvon Thibodeau. Looks like he might be one of the younger, better pass rushers in the NFL. Now you bookend them with Burns on the other side, dominant defensive tackles that they already have. I love this move for the Giants because, as I said, their offense isn't going to be very good this year. But they have young talent now on that defensive line that could be there for 4, 5, 6 years, dominating in their primes as you wait for that offense and getting a new quarterback to sort of hit that in stride. You look at the price tag on that. Yes, it's a lot of money, but understand this, people. That's why you have length of contracts and guaranteed money here, and the salary cap went up $30 million, and you're not exactly going out on the free agent market and paying top dollar for multiple players. You let a top running back go, you let a top safety go. This is how you allocate those funds. You give me a good pass rusher for a second-round draft pick essentially here and pay top dollar. I like the move by the Giants yesterday, no doubt about it, Ben.
When you think of the best edge rushers or defensive linemen in the National Football League, Brian Burns might not be the one that comes to the front of your mind first, but he is darn good, and he has been plagued by playing in Carolina, and we will focus on the Panthers in a moment, but Brian Burns, in all 5 years with the Panthers of his National Football League career out of Florida State, has had at least 7.5 sacks. He only had 8 a season ago, coming off a career high of 12.5 back in 2022. 46 sacks in the last 5 seasons, ranks 13th among the NFL in that time, was a Pro Bowler in both 2021 and 2022. Did not exactly play for the winningest franchise in the past 5 years. There were reports over a year ago when the Panthers were struggling, firing Matt Rule, when they ended up trading Christian McCaffrey to San Francisco, that Brian Burns was the other big hot commodity on the market, leaving Charlotte. There were reports that the Rams offered 2 first-round picks and a second-rounder in return for Brian Burns, and Carolina said no. The Giants only gave the Panthers a second-round pick and a 5th-round selection as well. What is the point of the temperamental David Tepper, who has all the money in the world, if he is not going to spend it? Carolina, Donnie, is 300 to 1 to win Super Bowl 59. They are nearly double the price of the Patriots, who have the second longest number at 170 to 1. If the Panthers have a win total of 4.5, I am going to bet the under. If the Panthers have a win total of 3.5, I am going to bet the under, and I'm going to maybe go all under on both of the decisions I have just said.
Yeah, and also the damning advice there was, right, like you were still a bad football team 2 years ago. You could have got 2 number ones to really restock and do whatever you wanted in the draft over the next 2 years with those multiple picks, and they passed that up for a second round. And now, granted, again, you're looking at Burns, who was under contract a year and a half ago, which is much more appealing than what he is now because you know you had to pay him $150 million with close to $100 million guaranteed. But also, as I talk about like the New York Giants in flux here, the Giants aren't a very good team, but by the time they become a good team or the chance to become a good team, Brian Burns is still going to be a good football player, Ben. So if you're looking at it from the Carolina Panthers perspective, it wasn't a 30-year-old veteran who finally gets the free agency. You're like, look, by the time you're good, we're good, you'll be 33 and maybe not so good, and we're paying you a lot of money here. Brian Burns should have been the building block that you say, you know what? No, we didn't trade you 2 years ago for 2 first-round picks. You're our franchise guy, and we're going to pay you like it here because everybody needs pass rushers. And also, if you're taking a look at, Ben, at some of those statistics where you try to line up, hey, sack leaders over the past 5 years, you try to be a sack leader when every single fourth quarter you're down double digits and the other team is just running the clock out. Put Burns on a football team that's quality, who has leads in the fourth quarter, who'll get at least 3 to 4 more sacks per season because of the opportunities that he would have. So love the move for the Giants. But again, to your point, We don't know what's going on in Carolina, but I think we know what's going on. The owner's just making just a mockery of that franchise right now.
Have fun, Dave Canales. I'm sure the rookie head coach will not be a scapegoat by any means. Notable free agency deals yesterday on the opening day of the legal tampering window on the defensive side. Brian Burns, tagged, trade, and signed by the G-Men. Christian Wilkins, after all 5 years in Miami, now a Las Vegas Raider to anchor that defensive line alongside Max Crosby. A good move for the Raiders. 4-year deal, $110 million. Xavier McKinney, a big move for the Packers. He was with the New York Giants, now a member of that Packers secondary. We mentioned Jonathan Grenard. The Eagles add Bryce Huff, and Leonard Williams remains in Seattle, where he was traded to from New York just last season. Of those other moves outside of Burns, Donnie, which defensive move sticks out to you?
I like the McKinney deal here. I really do for the Green Bay Packers because, again, this is going against the notion, and some of this is a false notion. If you remember over the past, let's just say 20 years, who are the teams that got applauded every single year? And they'd say, you never can win a Super Bowl or have a good football team if you splash down cash in the first couple days of free agency. Yeah. It was the New England Patriots used to tell you that. Why? They're the best football player to ever roam the earth. So they got away with horrible draft picks and not spending any money because Tom Brady made up for everything. Same thing in a case with the Green Bay Packers. Not only getting one Super Bowl, but they also had a quarterback that goes, we can give him nothing and win 12 football games every year so our franchise can make more money and not pay in free agency. Do you see the turning of the tide now in both of these franchises, particularly now with the Green Bay Packers going out on day number one and signing a top-flight running back to almost $50 million? Never would that have been done under Aaron Rodgers. And number two, going on the defensive side, making a splash, maybe the best free agent safety on the market, and young too, 26 years old. He's got a ton more Pro Bowl years left. I loved what the Packers did yesterday, but also Grenard going over to the Minnesota Vikings. It's almost like they're saying, we're not giving up on the season. We're not drafting a young quarterback and say, hey, guys, in 3 years, come catch us here. You lose Danielle Hunter, which is what essentially happened, but you got a quality pass rusher that's younger here. I like that move as well. And also the Eagles getting Huff. We'll see in that rotation if Josh Sweat is learned to be on the move and or Hassan Reddick. You had to make sure you have a backup plan here. So at least now one of those guys can be expendable with that big contract. You can also fill in the coffers there and get extra draft capital. I thought it was a great day across the NFL yesterday. A lot of teams got a lot better, but also if you're saying, who was the one questionable move? It's probably still Tony Pollard, though. So I think that was the only questionable move of the day. Everything else I really liked.
The NFC North is going to be fascinating. The Vikings had the longest price at plus 550. The Bears 4-1. The Packers second best number plus 220. And the Lions the favorites at plus 135. Even with Minnesota having the longest number, or if you want to enter Chicago with the rookie quarterback that is more than likely going to be Caleb Williams, I don't think the floor in the NFC North is going to be all that severe this year. The Vikes and the Bears probably win totals around 7.5, 8 and a hook, and probably the over having the juice. Some more moves on the offensive side. Gabe Davis leaving Buffalo, now in Jacksonville alongside Trevor Lawrence. 3-year deal, $39 million. And let's give it up to the big fellas. Robert Hunt, 5-year deal, $100 million with the Carolina Panthers. All right, at least you're going to protect Bryce Young. And Donnie, your Eagles yesterday extending Landon Dickerson, who has been a Pro Bowler his last 2 years in his 3-year NFL career. 4-year deal up to $87 million. That would make him the highest paid offensive guard in the history of the NFL. I bring that up alongside Robert Hunt because those interior offensive linemen are starting to see an uptick in their salary. Notice that moving forward around the National Football League.
Building in the trenches, protecting your young investments, which are your quarterbacks, always makes sense. You will never hear me say that's a terrible move. Why did you spend that much money if it makes your offensive line better? And boy, the Carolina Panthers certainly need that. But get back to the Philadelphia Eagles and Landon Dickerson. Here's why the NFL is crazy and why you need a good GM. Landon Dickerson was eligible for a contract extension and got it. The highest paid guard in NFL history. How about this? He gets paid more money than any guard in the history of the NFL and drops his salary cap number for 2024 by $3 million. That's what's crazy about this sport, where now you make those splashes and extend it over the years. We say, oh, you can't afford anybody else. What if I told you the Eagles actually got more cap space by signing a guy to more money than we've ever seen in the NFL? It's just the way it works here. It's fun. But yes, invest in your offensive line. You will protect your quarterback. You're better off in the long term.
Not a ton of movement in the conference prices in the AFC. The Chiefs, the favorite by still over $1 in front of the Ravens. More movement in the NFC. The Niners incredibly short. The Lions didn't do much of anything yesterday in terms of free agency moves, but the Eagles grow a little bit shorter. The Packers at a 10-1 number. That's a tightly compact top 5 after San Francisco. Some of the big names still out there. Up next.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State rule.
Be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that lightning in a bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The Brooks are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats and fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart Team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The free agency frenzy in this opening hour on the early line on a Tuesday ends out this opening hour. And although the opening day of the legal tampering window was yesterday, and we saw a ton of the biggest names and the biggest moves happen, there are still a ton of other big names out there and some more moves to be had. The league year officially starts tomorrow afternoon. Notable free agents remaining On the offensive side, some quarterbacks, Ryan Tannehill, Jameis Winston. Where will they find gigs around the NFL? The big name Derrick Henry, J.K. Dobbins, Joe Mixon, now available after Aaron Jones signed this morning by the Minnesota Vikings. 1-year deal worth $7 million. Some big name wide receivers like Calvin Ridley, and offensive linemen that have been staples for their organizations, now testing the open market. Of the offensive names, Donnie, who do you like the most?
It's really discount market and what those prices are going to be, because you can say, like, yeah, you like quite a bit of those, but it also is going to be determined, like, wow, you got to steal, let's just say, on a Derrick Henry, on a Calvin Ridley, who is heard to be as much as 3 years around 60 to 70 to $80 million. But if you didn't go day number one, that means that market doesn't quite know what your exact value is going to be. But Tannehill's going to be a quality backup. So is Jameis Winston. The most interesting one on the offense, I guess the high octane guy, would be Ridley here. And the reason why he wasn't back with the Jacksonville Jaguars is they would have to pay draft compensation back to the Atlanta Falcons. That played a big deal, but it probably his asking price right now is a little bit too high. We'll see if he goes on day number 2 or day number 3 of free agency here.
They signed Gabe Davis to a 3-year, $39 million deal yesterday, did Jacksonville. Defensive side of the football, Danielle Hunter, who was a sack master last year in Minneapolis. Well, Minneapolis will test the open market. Chase Young, after a stellar home stretch with the San Francisco 49ers. That is the same case. Patrick Queen, who had been an anchor of the Baltimore Ravens, best defense in the National Football League last year, is a free agent. In some secondary defensive backs as well. Still plenty to come. I'm sure we'll get some breaking news over the next 2 hours live right here on this Tuesday on the early line, because hour number 2 starts in 55 seconds.